Battle of the Minis. Eldritch Foundry versus Hero Forge. I'm just kidding. There's no battle, but there will be a comparison between the two. And not in stating who's better than the other, because quite frankly, I love both companies. But there is a difference between size and thicknesses and other things. And then I just kind of want to talk about the comparison that you may or may not like about one or the other. And I'm not here to bash any of the companies. Like I said, I enjoy them both, but I am going to just point out just some of the differences that you can see from one and the other. So let's start with Hero Forge. We all know they're miniatures, for the most part. I mean, I'm sure most of you do. Here's one of the more recent ones. This is the one my daughter designed. And I loved it so much that I painted one for myself. And as you can see, their miniatures are pretty thick and rounded. Now this works fantastic if you are comic booking. They're far thicker. Everything, as you can see, like in the wings here, it's just very rounded. This kind of reminds me of like Lilo and Stitch. The entire art style is just plump and rounded, and that's why I kind of feel like Hero Forge is plump and round in a good way, though, not in a bad way. But now the differences are going to be a little bit hard because most of these miniatures are from past commissions for either friends or people that have contacted me through my page, so they tend to mess with the sizes. I have a feeling this one is bigger than you normally would, so it's going to be kind of hard to compare the size between an Eldritch Foundry mini, but we will get back to that. Now, as I was saying, when it comes to Hero Forge, everything is a bit more rounded about, and if you enlarge your character, like I am almost 100% positive this character at the time that it was commissioned was enlarged to one of its more maximum sizes that you're able to do on Hero Forge. This also creates things to start stretching out, and sometimes the armor can start to look a little bit funky, but it's really not too bad. And like I said, when it comes to comic booking, you have a little bit more leeway to fix up kind of those strange looking mistakes or anything. Not in the miniature itself, but just, you know, comic booking can cover a lot of things. But yeah, as you can see, like everything's rounded out. Everything about this is round, and that's great. Like for comic booking, that's awesome. So I guess you can say Hero Forge is a bit more cartoony looking, and again, it's not bad, especially for what I do. It's great. But not everyone is fully sold on the whole cartoon look. Trust me, I've read the comments. But it's all, in the end, it's just a personal preference. But as you can see, like everything about Hero Forge is definitely, you know, has a bit more cartoony vibe. Now, it doesn't help that I myself paint a more cartoony version of things, so, you know, it's gonna look even more cartoony, but it all plays well. But like I said, if you're not totally sold on such, you know, thickness, then maybe you should have a look on over to Eldritch Foundry. Starting with one of my more recent finishes, we have here the Barbarian that was kind of going off a vibe of Hellblade, I believe. As you can see, you can already tell, like, even just in the arm, it's definitely way thinner than what you would have with Hero Forge. Here we go, look at that. There is a pretty good thickness difference for the most part, especially like in the faces. So you can kind of see here, let me try to zoom in. Whoa, okay. So as you can see here, her face is a bit more thinned out. I guess I would pretty much call this on a more quote-unquote realism scale of how her face looks. And normally realism works a little bit more finicky when it comes to comic booking, but I suppose we're not focusing on that. But if you don't want a super cartoony kind of vibe, again, my painting doesn't help the fact that that's what I do, then you might find yourself liking Eldritch Foundry a bit better. As you can see, it's not as rounded. There's a bit more defining tones within like the body itself. And you can just kind of see, as I hopefully zoom in enough, that there is definitely like a thickness difference as I knock all the minis down compared to the two. Put them side by side. You can pretty much quickly tell the difference between the two. So if you're not fully sold on the, you know, kind of cartoony look of a Hero Forge, such as this, then you might find yourself looking a little bit more different on Eldritch Foundry side, which I find a great in-between zone. It's, you know, it's still rounded about to where I can pretty much get, like, my comic booking for me personally, I can get that done, you know, and have that look across it. But at the same time, you know, if you kind of want that more realistic kind of look, you know, how, you know, Mini started with, you might like this one better. Now, I was also asked about the size comparison. I believe this in here is a halfling, and then this would be like your typical medium-sized creature, which I'm pretty sure halflings are still considered medium-sized, but the fact that you can see the difference between the two is still pretty cool. So, you know, like, you know, this one is the halfling, or no, I'm pretty sure it's a halfling, compared to, like, you know, your normal-sized human person. Now, if you want a comparison between the height of a medium-sized Eldritch Foundry and a medium-sized Hero Forge, I'd say they're pretty close. Now, again, I don't know if, you know, per se, this was an old commission order, so I usually, if I'm printing it myself, I usually print an extra one. And this is to sometimes help me figure out the do's and don'ts of what not to do on the person's mini I'm working for versus my own that I don't care if I mess up on, such as my terrible blending technique in the arm for the fire. But besides that, I want to say that the size differences are pretty close to one another. And then the other thing, excuse me, I think it's a little dirty down there for like the sticky tacks that I use. As for the material though, now I believe each one has their own different levels of material that you can use, such as, you know, your typical basic plastics by Hero Forge, and then you have their premium plastic. Now, I don't currently have a premium plastic on hand for Hero Forge. I don't know where I put it currently. I apologize. But come to say that for the lower tier of plastics for them, everything is just a bit more less defined in details. It's really not horrifically off from their premium plastic. And their regular, like, lower grade plastic one, it's, how do I explain this? It's just not as detailed, but it's also not horrifically off either. So if you're kind of contemplating between the two, I mean, I'd probably personally go for the premium plastic because I kind of do like that extra little oomph and detail to get in there. But, you know, it's not horrifically off if you want to go on the little bit lower scale too. Now, I believe even just like their normal type of scale for resin or whatever material they use, like the detail in these are insane for Eldritch Foundry. Not saying, you know, these aren't bad either for Hero Forge. That's a clear piece, as if you can really see that. This is the one I printed, so it's not going to be pretty because I am not a professional printer. But the details on these, and I'm assuming it's because of their wax that they use for the supports, instead of having those little brackets, such as these when I print, there's usually like little nubs like these, or chips, oops, on this one. Okay, so under here, you're going to have a bunch of supports. If you don't know anything about 3D printing, you're about to learn a little bit. So all these little divots, these dots, there was a tiny little like stick right there, but like a lot of them, covering almost like this entire base down. And this is to help support the mini when it's being printed. I usually print mine at an angle, so, and it's printing upside down. So the machine will come down and it's going to slowly build from nothing into something at the top. Now, the mini just isn't going to print like this in one full blow. It's got to have supports, such as right there in the tail. You can send you that little extra thing I didn't get grinded off. That's a support. So, and even with like when you order a Hero Forge, sometimes you're going to get these tiny little divots, not as extreme as that one, but let's say a smaller one like this one. You might get a little divot because when you snap off those supports, because it's resin doesn't like to just break, it shatters. Resin's a little bit of a finicky thing. So if I were to like tear off this arm, it's likely just going to shatter. It doesn't like to just snap off cleanly. Like here's a little nub right here. And with that, you usually want to take a grinder and then grind off that piece to smooth it out. So you want to do something like that to get that piece off, and then you just do your typical painting over it, right? Now, when it comes to Eldritch Foundry, because they do not use that, because they use wax supports, you won't find any nubs at all on this miniature. Look at that. That is the most cleanest base I have ever seen. There is no nubs, no nothing. So like, okay, let's go back to Again, my printing skills aren't nearly as good, so they're going to make far less mistakes than I will when you order from Hero Forge. But there's a couple times, even though like the ones have been ordered from Hero Forge, there's sometimes tiny little divots, but they are easy enough to cover up as well. You know, if you have some plastic putty or something, or you can even grind it out with the file. It's not that bad. But the fact that you don't have to deal with those nubs at all is pretty cool when it comes to this. Like, it is completely clean. There is nothing to clean, nothing to worry about. It is just printed perfectly. I've been trying to avoid this one because she needs another spray of MAC coat. She is way too shiny for me still, and I hate shiny. So when you come to this, like, all the details are going to pop out. You don't have to worry about, you know, cleaning any of it up. It's your Eldritch Foundry comes in, you give it a little bath with soap to get rid of that excess kind of like oily residue when you first get them, such as this. One of the ones I have ordered is a goblin. And again, there is going to be no cleanups on any little like supports that I have to worry about because again, Eldritch Foundry uses a wax support, so there is nothing that can break from her. Now you can kind of see, this one's not nearly as bad, but you can kind of see there's a little bit of like oily residue. And all you have to do, Dawn dish soap, a toothbrush, a good warm bath, scrape it up a little bit gently, and they're good as new and they're ready to prime. And like I mentioned in another video before, that they're easy to prime. They prime so beautifully. Such as this one I will be working on very soon. This one is for a friend. Now, Eldritch does not have any Minotaur options yet, I'm sure. But, so we kind of just winged it for what it's going to look like. But as you can see, I'm pretty sure this is a fur bulk body, but you can add, you know, tail. So this is going to somehow magically, I will work it out somehow, turn it into like a Minotaur-like person. So they added, you know, horns and stuff, and everything is pretty clean. Now, I did mention before, it does tend to come with a little bit of a grittiness to it, but it's really doesn't really make that much of a difference. Like, it's really not too bad, honestly. But yeah, this one I primed, you know, she's had her bath, she's had her nice little bubble bath, and a toothbrush scrub, and now she's all primed. I just wanted to make sure she was fully dry before I started to paint her up. And the same thing goes for this beauty I got during, like, the Halloween event. This again is Eldritch Foundry, and look at this. This thing is gorgeous. Like, I want like 5 more of these. I absolutely love it. But like, look at the detail in here. It's fantastic. And again, like the plastic itself, it's pretty strong. Now I had also that bringing back to, I had someone ask me, you know, how strong they are as the material. I want to say they're both pretty even on material wise. Like I said, I don't have one that specifically came from Hero Forge. These ones I printed myself, but I did use resin as well, and I've worked with several of the ones that came from Hero Forge personally, and I want to say the two can probably compare pretty closely. And when it comes to resin, you do have to be careful in general. I mean, it's not like your WizKids Mini. Just a quick pop look at the WizKids. Now, this is an actual like plasticky material. It's movable, it's bendable, far less likely to break on a gaming table, and it could probably survive a drop better than a resin miniature. But that's just what you're gonna get with resin. It's kind of a brittle material in general, and you just gotta be careful with it. Now, sometimes what I will do is I will glue a washer at the bottom of the base of a miniature, so it gives it a little bit of a weight. So when you put it on the gaming table, it's just going to have a little bit more sturdiness to it, so you don't accidentally, you know, swat it over, because if any of you have those gaming nights at D&D, sometimes it can get a little hectic, or, you know, your kid comes in swatting things around, or an animal comes in swatting things around, or you have giants of friends who swat things around as well. But that's besides the point. But, yeah, for as material, it's pretty close hand in hand. Like, I'm not going to knock it down. Like, I'm pretty careful with my minis, but even with that, I've had minis break. And honestly, if they do, this little bit of super glue, you know, say his arm, if it was a clean break, you know, then you can just super glue it back on, and it's pretty much good to go. You don't really have to worry about it. But, so yeah, as material wise, I want to say both are pretty close to each other. Like, you're just going to have to be careful as you can with them. It's not a bad thing. I mean, just be careful with your minis. They are fragile. But, yeah. Hands down, if you aren't completely sold on the Hero Forge look, you know, you find it too roundy, too cartoony, then maybe you want to have a look at Eldritch Foundry. And like I mentioned, they are a bit more kind of on the realism side, a bit more thinned out, but you can still get it to work if you are trying to go for a cartoony vibe and such. But, you know, everything's a bit more slimmed out, a little bit more thinner. Sorry, the camera angle isn't the greatest, let alone the light. But yeah, no, I enjoy both of them. Like, I really do like both of them. So I'm trying to pick my giant ones of each one. And as you can see, you get the Dragonborn versus like the Furbolg. Furbolg's pretty bulky here, but it could be just the armor as well. I did actually I made a Furbolg. I forgot. I'm kind of dumb, sorry. I did make a Furbolg because I was really excited that they had one, and it's so hard to find a female, and so I made this one. And again, she's going to have a little shine to it. She hasn't had her bubble bath yet to get off the excess oils and stuff off of her. But so you can slim them down a bit, change their armor up, and I'm really excited when I have this one done. But again, you know, you're going to have a little bit of brittleness up here, but it's not too bad. It has a little give to it. The Eldritch Foundry, that is. Has a little give to it. But again, you know, nothing you really want to try to knock off your table. I wouldn't suggest, you know, chucking these at any point in time, as I've heard some people do. But yeah, like, it's a good material in the end. Like, I still really like them both. So in the end, you know, you're not completely sold on one or the other. If you just want, you know, you don't like the bulkiness, the roundiness, then, you know, maybe have yourself a look at Eldritch Foundry. It's still a pretty newer company, but they have a fantastic miniatures. If you haven't tried it, please do so. They are amazing. And you can still use my coupon code that I have posted on my page on Facebook at Painting Myth or on my Instagram at Painting Myth, and give them a try for 15% off. You know, it's worth giving it a try. I promise you. And especially when they start releasing, if they haven't already, their dynamic weapons, they are amazing. Like, it just gives your character a little extra oomph. Like, look at that. It is so cool. And yeah, and Eldritch Foundry hasn't, you know, done anything like that before, but like, even then, they have really cool options as well. So I'd give, you know, both get a hands up, like thumbs up for me. I like them both. But it's up to you, you know, which one you like more. You know, do you want the more thicker kind of miniature itself, which, to be fair, it doesn't seem to help with any of like the sturdiness. They seem to be about the same when it comes to that. My players can sometimes be a little rough with minis, or just because they have giant hands. But so yeah, but in the end, you know, both are pretty good, but it's just your personal preference. You know, if you want something a little bit more realism to go with the Eldritch Foundry. If you don't really care for realism and just want like a thicker mini to go with, then go with Hero Forge. They both paint really, really well. And yeah, I really don't really have much more to say than that. If you think I missed anything, you know, let me know in the comments or send me a message. And yeah, hopefully I didn't bomb this video too bad, but I think I covered everything that I felt I needed to when it comes between, you know, Eldritch Foundry and Hero Forge. I like them both. They're both great. And if you haven't given, you know, Eldritch Foundry a try, I 100% recommend to give it a try. I mean, look at this guy. He gets an extra hand on his back. It's awesome. But yeah, hopefully, you know, this video did some justice. Let me know what you think.